and welcome to Nickel City Chronicles. Today, my guest is founder of AA Build Up. No, I'm just joking. Bill Walsh, a leader in Buffalo in the recovery realm. Someone who really is like an example to people, the youth in recovery. But I'll let him tell you about that. Bill, thanks for coming on and give us a little story, your life story, and where you're coming from, where you're going. Take it away.
Sure. Well, first, Neil told me he was doing a new thing on his podcast where he would interview interesting people,
Yep.
And obviously, he got way to the bottom of his list, dug as far as he could, and said, "God damn, I guess it's come to this," and decided to ask me to come on, And I figured I'll come on, I'll humor the guy.
Thanks, man.
Because it's good manners that when somebody calls you interesting, you don't go out of your way to correct them. You have to just see it through. So here we are.
That's hilarious.
And I want to ask too. You're not going to make me eat any hot sauce, are you?
No, you don't have to do that.
It's not that kind of podcast.
Now that would get a lot of views though.
Yeah, no, because I had some milk and I left it at home. And I'm
the
glad,
hot ones. That's
I'm
a
glad.
good show.
Yeah, so a little plug for the hot ones. I don't get paid by them, and now I should. My story is I was born November 7th, 1990. That was the 63rd anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. Just
Ooh.
a little handy way to remember my birthday in case you forget.
So you had that revolutionary seed planted right in
Sure.
your head.
Yeah. And without incriminating any family members, I'll just suffice it to say that I was born into a house with 5 people: my mother, my father, my sister, and my brother. And by the time I was about 5, my sister went off to do her own thing. My brother went off somewhere else to kind of do his own thing, and my parents were getting divorced. So right away, my sort of interactive world was cut in more than half.
Yeah. That's traumatic.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
for
absolutely. Sure. And if you were to ask me when the sense, that people who struggle with addiction tend to have, feeling alienated, feeling like you're not enough, feeling like the world is unstable, that was quite a bit to internalize, as my first experiences with the world. And no doubt that shaped my view on the world, shaped how I view people, shaped how I thought people were going to act.
Right.
And, nevertheless, my mother did a tremendous, heroic job of softening that blow the best she could. Who the hell knows where I'd be without at least her, influence.
Right.
No doubt she did. So
where
I'm
would
so
we be
grateful
without
for
our
that.
mothers, man?
I'm telling you.
I'll second that one.
Absolutely. So, years went by, and, I was fortunate when I was younger. I started skateboarding, and anybody who knows that community, what that world is like, it's a very honestly positive thing. It gets a bad rap because you hear about the bad things,
Right,
but for
right.
the most part, I don't think people really understand just how awesome it is or how talented, some of these kids are at what they're doing. Like back in my day, when I was skating, that was, I guess, 20 years ago almost.
Back in my day.
yeah, exactly. This was going back.
But yeah, so we're talking about the early 2000s?
Yeah,
that was when skating was big. That's when Tony Hawk Pro Skater was out,
he
the
did
video
the 900,
game.
right?
Yeah, the 900, you're right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, you're talking about a specific time period when
the golden age.
Yeah, skating was like a way of life. It was like a culture.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I caught it right in the core, and did it every day and got what used to be considered pretty good. Now I'm like, I would have sucked. With Instagram, with just all the things that push progress.
Yeah, there's so much talent out there now.
Absolutely. And it just wasn't like that. Like we used to watch stuff on VHS tapes back then.
Yeah,
stuff that like I started skating a couple years ago again, and I
Remember
would go to
Thrasher,
skate
Skate and
parks.
Destroy?
Yeah. I would go to skate parks a couple years ago, and I would look at these dudes and I'd be like, these dudes are better than what we used to watch on these tapes. Really. The standard for excellence is so high. But that just wasn't the world we were in. The line between professional and amateur was a lot less impenetrable, or uncrossable than it is now.
Yeah.
So we all had our high hopes, we thought we would go on and be sponsored or whatever.
That was the goal. That's the goal.
Absolutely. And I was looking at getting maybe sponsored by local shops and things like that back when that used to be, a thing. I guess it still is. But you would think that that's where I started to get in trouble. But really, when I started using drugs, I got away from skateboarding, because when you skate, you're in a you're in a world with people who tend to be of a certain profile, which is normally broken home, normally loners to some extent. You know, it's a bunch of loners together, basically.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting.
Yeah, and who else is hanging out, you know, in just random places in cities and towns with, you know, the monuments where people flick their change? Is people who are getting high, you know, and it wasn't really that hard of a transition for me to run into them and, you know, find this thing, you know, which was just a world of drug use. And it wasn't very long after that that I stopped skateboarding, and that became what I did every day, all day. And I didn't have a long run with it, you know. It was only a few years, and, you know, I say maybe I was 10, 11 when I started using. And by the time I was 14, I was in 2 different detention centers.
Wow.
I was in 2 outpatients.
Wow, at such a young age.
Yeah, I was on pins. I was on pins.
Yeah, pins.
I'm a graduate
if you were
of
on pins, anyone knows that. If you were on pins, you were a bad kid.
Yeah. Well, I'm a graduate of pins. You know,
I remember those kids.
Yeah, I wasn't just in need of supervision anymore. They put me on straight probation. And I did that. I had, you know, numerous run-ins with the law and things. I was in one mental institution following hospitalization that was pretty near fatal. You know, I was hospitalized, I think, on 2 other occasions.
Wow.
Then I went to an inpatient, and then I turned 15. So it was a lot packed into a really short period of time.
That is wild.
I'm certainly, it still occurs to me today that I'm really lucky to be alive. I know a lot of people that just aren't, you know, because they were doing similar things and living with a similar sort of reckless abandon, you know, with their lives. But I have to say that when I was in it, there was no sense of like, one day this will change, I need to get it together. It was just a complete suicide mission, you know, without the gun. And it was just throwing myself into this flame.
A slow and torturous one.
Sure, you know, and what's going on in the mind of the person who is willing to do that? It must be some level of self-hatred, self-rejection, just a low self-worth. And that all definitely described me to a T. So I was a good candidate for treatment, and went into a place, and you know, I got clean then. That was August the 3rd. I was put into detention center, and they actually put me into that detention center on August the 3rd when I had a bed and rehab opening on August the 11th of 2005, because they didn't think I was going to make it for 9 more days. You know, I was maybe 100 pounds, you know. I mean, as non-physically imposing as I am now, you can imagine what I looked like when I was, you know, 13 or 14, getting high and losing weight. You know, I didn't have any weight, and I was still losing it. My pants were, you know, already like tied with a shoestring, and they were still falling off. So it was just a bad situation.
So you hit rock bottom early.
Yeah,
quick.
You know,
your path to rock bottom was straight. There was no like branches that you hit in the you just went straight to the bottom.
Absolutely. You know, that's how I roll. You know, I don't fuck around. I get right to it. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and so I'm in this rehab. You know, I think there was one person who was younger there. I hate to say it, but I believe that guy actually died. You know, you don't go to rehab when you're not even eligible to get like a driver's permit unless there's something going on. You know,
something's bad.
You know, the profile of the people who went to rehab that young, I don't know where they are, but when I hear about them, it's because they're no longer living or something horrible happened. So anyway, I went into this rehab, and every crazy story I heard, the places they would take us, we'd listen to, I mean, old people who had, you know, been doing it for decades. There was nothing that they said that I couldn't understand to some extent. The people pushing shopping carts with the cans, it didn't matter. The people at absolute rock bottom and at their last wit's end, I understood.
And it didn't have to be exactly what they were talking about. It was the feelings behind it. It was like you're relating to like the emotional
desperation.
The desperation, right?
Absolutely, and I understood it. And although I was a baby, really, I was a child, I still knew that what I'm experiencing is something that can't be discarded. You know, that there's something significant about this. These people don't know me from anywhere. They're just talking about themselves. They weren't, you know, directing this at me. It wasn't like a scared straight thing. I was just listening to people talking, and that was enough for me, you know, to sort of convince me, like, you know, I know what's basically going to happen if I go back to using. Of all the times I was institutionalized, I would get out. It wouldn't be probably more than 2 or 3 days before I'd be right back to whatever I was doing, and it wouldn't be much longer after that before I was either in a hospital or back in another institution. So having some separation from it, and then having this kind of society that I was introduced to associate myself with instead of going back to using. When I got out, that's what I did. And, when you get clean that young, you don't really need to be anything else other than just clean that young to stick out like a sore thumb for people to maybe think of you a little bit more highly than they should. You're just an existing thing. And especially back then, this is 15 years ago now, it wasn't as common as I'd say it is now. I don't remember anybody really near my age being clean back then, and...
Yeah, you were the first of a line that came a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
Because now, all of a sudden, with the opiate epidemic...
Right.
Now you see people with 15, 16 years old going to rehab all the time.
Right. Absolutely.
But 2005, this was rare.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a few, but really not many.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was getting there, but it was not obviously anywhere near what it is now. And for me, I mean, I grew up in the village of Hamburg. Heroin is there, and I was.
Didn't they have a nickname for that high school?
Heroin High.
Heroin High School.
Exactly. Yeah. And Frontier. I don't know what the official Heroin High is. Either Frontier or
Probably
Hamburg.
both.
They called them both. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Frontier had another nasty name.
Yeah.
You comment below.
Yeah.
I don't
go.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I missed heroin. I was only a degree or two of separation away from it. And if I had it available to me, I'm sure I would have done it. I did everything else that they put in front of me,
Yeah.
So it wasn't some moral thing, that prevented me from doing it. It's just that I didn't have access to it.
Right.
And holy hell if I had done that, I mean, I was killing myself literally with, alcohol and pills and all that kind of stuff. If it had gotten to there, I would be a tombstone,
Yeah.
No doubt. So,
yeah.
So I'm aware of that, definitely, and I don't pretend to understand what that degree of the thing is about. I think we get a little carried away with believing that all experiences are just exactly the same.
Right.
Sure, it might have felt the same way or whatever, but some things are different, and should be treated as such.
Yep.
I don't pretend to understand.
And another thing about that is for some people, certain experiences can feel different than others.
Sure.
Like somebody can lose their parent and they can get through it with minimal whatever, like pain.
Sure.
And then someone can lose their goldfish and be completely wretched and destroyed and can't go through, like, I'm just throwing an example out there.
Yeah.
But people comprehend certain things differently, especially when it comes to emotions and feelings. We all have our things that we can't handle and things that we could handle.
Yeah.
So there's also that aspect too.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I tend to be a pretty, sensitive person, to tell you the truth. And thinking back to what, not only my early experiences, you can imagine what kind of hell using was for me. Being, somebody who weighed like 80 pounds and, not having the total means to defend himself against much older and much larger people,
Right.
So I felt it pretty deeply, and I think that probably aided me along in, getting clean as early as I did, because I'm not good at kind of brushing things off like that. I tend to feel things really, really deeply and intensely, and
that kind of helped you in a way because you had enough. You
Sure.
felt it you felt the pain so much, and the pain was great enough so much. You said, "I'm done."
Sure. I mean, I often will go out of my way to try to feel pain that doesn't necessarily exist. Because in a way, it's kind of like a defense mechanism, I guess. To protect yourself.
Yeah.
Against perceived danger.
Right. That's so true.
That's probably some Catholic holdover shit,
Yeah.
that I kept. Yeah, but that's what it is. So, years went on, but I have to say that it wasn't like I went to rehab. Like, we all know people who they went into like a 28-day program, and by week 3, they already, they came in destitute and homeless and had nothing. And by week 3, they own businesses, and they're like getting ready to run for president, and they've got a job lined up at the agency and like all this
see
shit,
that all the time, right?
Yeah, and really, and some people they turn it around that quickly, I guess. In my case, I was the exact opposite of that. I was nothing like a poster child in any way as far as the treatment industry was concerned. And really, I didn't want to be. I didn't want them to, use my story to exploit me, basically is how I felt.
Right.
I didn't want to go into schools and present myself like this, this fucking zoo animal for all the kids to, ooh and ah at.
Yeah,
And,
I know
and,
exactly
and
what you're saying
present
right now.
myself like I'm somehow
Yeah.
other than human. And, it just didn't appeal to me, which is funny because as a person who has spent a lot of his life completely hating himself, then all of a sudden I had this big like thing to stand on, you know, and now I respect myself for some reason. It would have made more sense if I did go in and let them humiliate me, but for some reason I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And really, you know, I was in alternative schools. I was put in Baker Victory when I was using, and I was there for years and years. I didn't live there because I had, you know, the mother. If not for my mother, absolutely, I would have been living somewhere like that. But
wow, yeah.
I went to like, you know, the day treatment thing or whatever they call it, and you know, I was there for a long time, and I just wasn't going, you know, clean, like living this life that on paper I was productive, you know, and doing the right thing or whatever, but in reality I wasn't really doing much of anything other than talking about being clean and maybe throwing in some lofty principles into the conversation to throw people off the scent of what a hellstorm my life really was.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a teenager, you know, that was just thrown into a situation that was really ego inflating, you know, definitely. Yeah. And I didn't have any competition, so I was able to just, you know, talk some shit, which I can do, and just let it ride. But I remember actually too at the alternative school, they knew that I wasn't going to be a good student. You know, they decided that, they realized that. And what they did, they had a meeting, they had a million meetings, but this one meeting they said, okay, Bill, what if we set it up where you can come in at 1:30 in the afternoon and school ended at like, I think 3 or something. Why don't you just come in from 1:30 to 3? Will you do that? And you can just do whatever work while you're here. And you don't have to come in at, you know, 8 in the morning or whatever. And I was on the phone with the principal, probably high, you know. No, I think I was actually clean then, which makes this story even worse, you know. And I told her, I was like, I don't think so, you know. I'm just not into that. And I'll tell you why, because I didn't want your charity, you know. I didn't want your handout, and I didn't want to graduate with some asterisk that, you know, I'm the guy who went to school for a quarter of the time, and you just printed this piece of paper to fucking, you know, humor everybody.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that's always been my attitude. Like, I don't want things cheaply.
You want to earn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to know something? Just to pause for a second. I'm going to go back to your story in a second.
Sure.
It's interesting because I had a similar high school experience where I did not care at all about school. I skipped more school than I attended. And I was in summer school every year.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. Something, maybe it was my parents pushing me to at least do something and get the work done, which I would do. I would go to summer school. I'd pass the classes. I'd be back the next year. I was always behind. I never was in front like you know, some of the good students are. Finally, it all piled up to my senior year, and I got the opposite offer as you.
Okay.
My principal pulled me into the office, Principal Greco.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "You might as well just get your GED. There's no way you're going to graduate."
Yeah.
He said. And I said, well, okay, well, why do you say that? He said, well, first of all, you have 8 classes that you have to pass. So if you take a lunch, that means you're in summer school already. Oh. So that's 7 classes in summer school just to graduate.
Right.
And then he's like, and then he said, the only way you can graduate on time is if you don't have no lunch, no study hall, and while all these kids go home, because senior year you get to leave early. Mm. Okay. You only have half a schedule.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't.
I
wasn't in an actual.
Yeah,
high
you
school.
weren't.
Yeah,
you didn't make it that.
Yeah, I never.
No, you were. I think you were already gone by then. You were already in
probably
treatment. Yeah. But anyways, he said to me, if you don't want to get your GED, fine. But here's what you got to do. You got to take 8 classes, no study hall, no lunch, full schedule. Never been, and even in a freshman year, you don't do that. You have at least a lunch.
Right.
And he said, you want to try it? I said, sure, I tried it. Somehow I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't even know how. I couldn't even tell you. I barely, but it's just a weird thing. It was like I got the same offer, but it was like the opposite. It's like, here, pack on all these classes and see if you could do it.
Yeah.
And I did do it. I don't even know how. People looked at me in graduation day like, what is he doing here? Did he sneak in here or something?
Right.
Like they didn't even. Some of them probably didn't even know I was even going to school.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just wanted to throw that in there. But
no, definitely.
So so now they give you this offer.
Right.
You'd say no, I don't want it, and so where do you go from there?
Well, just kind of what you were saying too. They always told me from the time I was, you know, really young, and I was always kind of, I guess, reclusive and shy. You know, certainly owing in part to just, you know, experiences growing up or whatever. You know, and definitely, I bore some scars. from all that. But they always told me that, if you would apply yourself, you'd be at the top of the class, which made it especially painful and ironic that I was always pretty much at the bottom. And when I would get like, they would sort of mandate tutors for you if you missed a certain amount of time, and you'd have to go meet with this lady at like a library or whatever.
Right.
And, I'm sure it was frustrating for them to watch me do like, a quarter of the year's worth of work in like a week and a half, and just knock it out and be fine. And be like, yeah, well, to hell with you, fucking see you later, until next time. And that's just sort of the way it went. But so here's what happened. I went from that alternative school because they sat down at that alternative school. They had a meeting and they said, we need to find Bill an alternative school. It had gotten that deep. So they threw me into a different one. This was Stanley Falk. I went to the Cheektowaga location, and things didn't get really any better from there. And I ended up, I was put into school a year early when I was a kid, and I ended up dropping out, I think, like 3 years behind. And I was 19 at the time, and I was supposed to graduate when I was 17. So, and I had at least another year. It might have been more than that. That's pretty bad when you don't even know.
Yeah.
That's how, that's how like detached from the whole thing I was. Who the hell knows?
Exactly.
I don't know what grade I was in when I left public school. I don't know anything about it, really. I think I was in 7th, but gun to my head, I really couldn't tell you. Maybe 8th.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I dropped out 19. I had 5 years clean at the time. So that was my point in saying that it's not like I left, buttoned up, ready for the world. I had a lot of stuff to try to turn around, and I wasn't even beginning to try for a lot of years. Really, I probably was like 25 before I even started to feel somewhat like a person, or somewhat like the world was a place that I'm supposed to be, Not that I totally feel that way now, but at least I started when I was about maybe 25.
Yeah.
So, long story short, well, not really. Long, painful, complicated, tear-soaked story
right.
made a little bit shorter than it actually was. Being that I was sticking out like a sore thumb, and I had the ability to talk, I got asked to speak at this like really small event, 4 people maybe, when I was probably maybe 16 or 17. And it was a pretty inconsequential thing, except that marked the beginning of a process that really changed my life, definitely changed my world, changed the way I see myself, which was getting asked to do that more and more. The crowds kept getting bigger, and by the end of it, I think I spoke in something like 16 cities.
Wow, yeah, I remember that, dude.
About probably 135 different times.
Yeah.
Which amounts to something like 75 hours, of stage time. And funny enough, in the middle of that, I've always, since I started doing that, as shy as I was and reserved as I was.
We're talking about like the big city, like what do you call those, the year events that happen?
Like conventions.
Conventions, yeah.
Or even just events.
Yeah, these, yeah.
Like, I spoke in some rooms.
So in front of lots of people, hundreds of people sometimes. I mean, I've been to a couple when I watched you do it, and it was like incredible.
Okay.
Incredible. It was
Thank you.
Borderline stand-up comedy too. Like, it was entertaining. Everyone's watching. Everyone's tuned in, glued to you, dude.
Yeah.
And you had a gift. You have a gift of speaking, dude.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah. I'll tell you how bizarre that is. That for me, being up there is a really comfortable thing that I don't experience in really any other kind of facet of life. Even this. I mean, I seem confident and smiley, but I'm bleeding inside having this one-on-one interaction.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I love you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that, just talking to people in this level is a lot more difficult for me than being stared at by 100 sets of eyes, because they can't respond. I have the control here, and your job is to just sit there and go for the ride.
Yeah.
You don't get to kind of control the direction.
Right.
That's what I enjoy. That sounds like a control issue, and it might be.
I remember
but
one heckler you had one time.
I had a heckler?
Yes.
I don't even remember. I pushed that shit out of my mind.
Let me tell the story.
But I wish I could annihilate him right now.
This is one of the greatest Bill W. stories I've ever. I'll tell you right now.
I'm listening too, because
there's
I
a
don't
whole
remember
bunch.
this.
No, you're gonna remember as soon as I say this.
Okay.
Somebody said you're talking about getting clean at 15 or whatever age. Was it 15?
14.
14.
Yeah.
And you're talking about being so young and getting in recovery, and somebody in the crowd said, "Man, I dropped more cocaine than you use in your lifetime."
Yeah.
And you go, "Well, maybe if you didn't." Wait, hold on. I'm gonna get this right. I think you said something along the lines of,
"Yeah,
maybe if you weren't dropping so much you would have got cleaner as my age too.
Right.
And everybody started dying. Is that what exactly? Something along those lines.
Basically, yeah. And that's like an old line. I can't take full, credit for that.
Yeah.
I definitely laid that on a few people.
Yeah. It was hilarious though. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that's like an old, AA thing about they spilled more than you used or whatever.
Right. I spilled more than you used.
Yeah.
Maybe if you didn't spill so much, you'd be in recovery too.
Right. I'm kind of upset that the story you brought up, I borrowed that line from somebody.
Doesn't matter.
I wish it was something I said, but whatever.
The way you delivered it was great. It was hilarious.
Great. My rendition of it was perfect.
Yeah.
So
but continue.
but I mean, I kept getting up there more and more, and funny enough, and I've heard a lot of comics basically say something along these lines, but for me, that's such a comfortable place. And imagine if you're a person that sounds like a petrifying thing to do. To get up on a stage and have people just staring at you, and it is you that they're judging. And imagine you get up there, and they all start screaming at you that you suck, and the microphone feeds back, and then the microphone turns off, and they're booing you, and they're telling you to go home, and they never want to see you here again. What were you thinking coming here?
Yeah.
That feeling in your core, that's how I feel at parties.
Wow.
That's how uncomfortable I am. That's how much I hate it. But when I'm up there, I feel how I imagine an adjusted person would feel at a party. I feel at one. I feel peaceful.
It's like being at home.
I feel connected. Absolutely, and that is certainly a component for in the study of the mind. Why that would be, but a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah,
who are
something
drawn
about that.
to that.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of connecting with people, and how I fell into that was obviously completely by accident, but. When I was probably about 20, I did 5 minutes stand-up at an open mic that's no longer around. I got up there. It was actually on a weekend that was sandwiched in between 2 other weekends where I was going, I think, to Brooklyn the week before and to the Bronx the week after to do different things. Not stand-up, but... and I got up there, and I had 5 minutes of probably what really amounted to like logic puzzles about juvenile delinquency and masturbation and something else, and looking back though, I don't remember it really going too poorly. I remember it being okay. I had kind of a not the greatest like spot because I went right after this old guy, and I mean old guy, not like 50. He was everybody's grandpa looking guy, and he
like
got
late
up,
70s.
Yeah, and he got up there. He had a Cosmo magazine, and he was reading these articles about different ways to like stimulate your partner. And here's this old dude up on stage holding the Cosmo, like rubbing his lips and shit, and everybody was just screaming, and I that's just, it was an unfortunate thing that I had to go up in the vacuum of this guy's like,
you had to follow up with that one.
Thunderous applause,
tough,
and I start telling my, bizarre shit. But the thing was, I knew what it was to kill. I knew what it was to have an audience. I knew what it was to
captivate an audience.
Absolutely,
right?
And I'm not saying that to whatever. It's just the truth.
You've done it. I can honestly say you've probably done it 1,000 times.
Yeah,
at least.
I had a standard set for myself that when I did that 5 minutes, although it went well, I just felt like it didn't go well enough. One of the comics came up to me and said, it was a great set, we're glad you came. You didn't have, the most envied spot. That's why, I said that. You didn't, but nevertheless, we thought it was good. We hope you come back. And I'm sure I said, yeah, I'll be back, but I knew that I wasn't coming back because I felt like I had failed. And
That's interesting.
I just never went back. Plus, I was doing all this other stuff, and I felt like, well, I'm still kind of doing it, so I'll just keep doing this, And then the time came that stopped. And by then I was, just up to my neck in school and all this other stuff that I thought I wanted to do. Because I should go back and mention that after I dropped out, I did get my GED. I ended up going to ECC. I got my associates. Then I got my bachelor's in philosophy from UB, and then finished my master's in social work in 2019.
Wow. Good for you, dude.
And
master's in what?
Social work. Yeah.
Wow.
And
that's right up your alley too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And although I was writing throughout that, and that I've always really had it in the back of my mind, I was going to do stand-up. It just wasn't... that story became really distorted in my mind about how that actually went down, I remembered it as being a little bit worse than it was, because I'm just a perfectionist, I guess. But just being way, way too hard on myself. But it's always been in the back of my mind. So
that's got to be something a common denominator for addicts.
Sure.
Being so hard on yourself, thinking everyone's pointing the finger at you, and
Sure.
really, in reality, they're probably not.
Sure.
You know.
But it's also, I think, the source of great comedy.
Yeah.
And great comics. Yeah. Who don't want to be mildly entertaining. You know, I want to damage you. You know, I want to hurt you. I want you to need to go to the hospital, you know. And I don't want to punch you in the head, and I don't want to punch you in the stomach. I want to punch you square in the heart and
awesome.
kill you, you know.
That's
because
awesome.
when you punch somebody in the head, you jostle them, you titillate them with, you know, something mental. When you punch them in the stomach, you might shock them, but you're going to remember if somebody hits you in the chest with a baseball bat for a little bit longer, and maybe a little bit with a little bit more fondness, you know. And that's what I wanted to do. So you know, nobody probably does that in their first 5-minute set ever, but I thought I should have.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, now here it is, where this last year, you know, COVID and whatnot, I found myself with a whole lot of free time, and I started writing, you know. And last March, it's almost exactly a year ago, I was looking to sign up at another open mic at Helium, and I was looking at it. I didn't sign up the one week. I looked the next week, and the open mic got moved because of some other event. And I said, all right, I'm doing it. You know, I'm fucking doing it. There's no way I'm not doing this, because the moment I had any time to myself, it became so loud that I was like, I can't justify not doing it anymore.
Right.
And yeah, so 2 weeks later, when the next open mic was supposed to happen, everything got shut down because of COVID.
Wow.
So you tell me what the hell the odds were of that. I don't know if that was divine intervention saying, Bill, nobody wants to hear that shit, you know, or maybe it was just, Bill, take this year to write. I don't know which way to take it, but
probably the latter.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the latter.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this whole year I've just been working, honestly, really hard on
trying to hone that craft now,
and just getting stuff together. You know, I know there are like Zoom open mics and things, but that's not appealing to me. You know, I want to go to war and be shot at. You know, I don't want to go to the range.
You want to do a full hour? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, you're going to start with five, you know, and the weird thing is I have so much other experience, you know.
No, I'm saying, is that your end game? That you ever want to do an hour at some point? Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not going to get the amount of stage time in comedy that I've already gotten elsewhere for probably years, you know, just because they're not giving it away that easily, you know. But I've done the hour of talking, I've done 45 minutes, I've done 20, I've done a half hour, you know, I've done 10, I've done all the variations. Like, I know how to kind of build, you know, how to sort of keep it together, you know, how to present something in a
deliver,
in a good arch, you know. But yeah, so this whole year has just been all about writing. You know, right now I probably have, honestly, in the neighborhood of like 2 hours of stuff. After having thrown away a good hour, you know, or so that I just won't say. And I'd say all of it is at least like a C, you know, C+. Some of it better, but I just want to hit that world as hard as I possibly can, you know, and I'm willing to do it even if it literally kills me, you know, because after, you know, I tried the whole school thing. I tried to fit myself into this box that, dude, it just didn't fucking work out, you know. Like, I got my master's, I ended up working at this agency, and we all know, at least those of us familiar with addiction, that a few years ago the American Medical Association made this glorious grand declaration that we're now going to look at addiction as a medical issue. It's no longer this moral thing. Like, they laid their stamp on it to say that this is now our domain.
Right.
And everybody who was getting blindsided thought that was a really good thing.
Right.
And it wasn't. You know, I was like, these are the people that you want spearheading treatment of addiction, the last people that should be dealing with that population, you know, unempathetic people who it's going to be a clinical cold kind of exchange of things. You know, these are the people who are already pumping everybody that they can get their hands on with every pill and every liquid. Yeah. And you know, I think they admit themselves.
And then turn over the money. Like,
get
a patient in, get a patient out.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, I think they even admit that 80% of surgeries are unnecessary. Don't they? Something like that. Wow. So, I mean, this is who now, you know, like I said, they laid claim. They stuck their flag in that mountain, you know. Yeah. Addiction is ours. That's what they basically were saying. Yep. You know, I didn't think that was a good thing then. Funny enough, I found myself working in an agency. And long story short, they basically threw me out of the place. They they said that we had a difference in treatment philosophy. I would argue that I wasn't willing to commit insurance fraud, and they didn't like it.
Wow.
Because, here I am. After I got transferred after my training, they put me in a place where I got nothing but good feedback from anybody I talked to. They said, you're doing a great job. We're grateful to have you here. Thank you for taking on extra work and all this stuff. But when somebody would come in and didn't actually meet criteria for a substance use disorder, I didn't say that they did meet criteria, and
they don't get paid, so they didn't like that.
Right.
Wow.
And I was, I diagnosed people with everything from, severe heroin use disorder,
right.
Severe alcohol or whatever. So I wasn't like ignoring things,
And just to clarify for anyone,
yeah.
Not only do you have your master's degree in that round in sociology, right?
Social work.
Yeah. Not only do you have a master's degree in social work, you've also have 15 years of experience in recovery.
Right.
Not only that, you also read Aristotle and Plato and all the great philosophers like Jung and Nietzsche. You know this like the back of your hand. You're an expert at this, and they're gonna tell you how to go about what's the word? Diagnosing somebody, which is mind-boggling. So
it was a total cash grab, and it wasn't unlike working at like a call center, where you're incentivized to be dishonest at the expense of other people, and the more of a piece of shit you are, the further you get, and it tends to fall out that the people who are, I think, least qualified to be working with that population end up being the ones in charge of deciding how that population is dealt with. So while I was there, I was doing one-on-one sessions, I was doing, group sessions, and from everybody I heard from who talked to clients, they all said that they enjoyed it, they liked what I was giving them, and I'll tell you what I was giving them. I was treating them like people. Our like group sessions, I wasn't just lathering them for an hour with jargon,
Yeah, with the little worksheets.
Yeah,
just worksheet.
Just bogging them down. These people have such a short attention span anyway, and they're on drugs, and they don't like you, So,
Thank
and
you.
you go in and
so you knew that.
Yeah, I mean,
you understood that.
If the average person sat through that stuff, they'd go smoke a rock, and you think that these dudes are going to go through, they already know that they're being gamed. Why make it worse by also treating them like they're subhuman? So I was trying to like bridge that, and that's why I got into that field, is because I wanted to be a human connection, because I knew how fucked up it was. But the way it fell out was that after, again, they told me how great I was doing, yada yada, I went in on a Monday. I saw 3 patients in the morning. I had no indication that anything was about to happen, and I got back from lunch, and the program manager, who, not to sound, mean or toxic, but what a beta piece of shit he was. This guy, he called me in his office, and, he called me, and he said, "Hey, Bill, you want to come into," that's my impression of him. "Hey, Bill, you want to come into my office real quick?" And I hung up, even though I had no reason to really think anything was going on. I just thought, this isn't good.
You just felt it.
I just had the sense, this is not right, and I walked in, and it was the program manager. It was this employment specialist lady, and come to find out, the Grim Reaper was standing behind me, and they just told me, they didn't, my documentation was bad, and it was clear they had been like building a case, like the ATF does, how they don't get you right away, they kind of sit back, they let you, give you enough rope to hang yourself kind of thing.
Wow, that's interesting.
And they just started launching all these like accusations at me about how I was doing, X, Y, and Z wrong, and I was just obviously quite surprised that you would tell me that after you've been telling me I was doing it all right, basically.
Wow.
But the only gripe that they really ever did voice to me was that you're not admitting enough people for treatment. They said that we have to admit almost everybody, and I was admitting
almost everybody.
Yeah, I was admitting like 7 out of 10, and they were saying it's got to be like 9 out of 10.
Plus
at
one.
Least. Yeah, pretty much, exactly. And funny thing was, like the program manager told me that we work with the police. I shit you not. He used these words. He said we work with the police when somebody is put here for a DUI or something like that. The judge is going to send them here for treatment, and they want them to get that treatment, whether or not they actually meet some kind of criteria for an alcohol use disorder. We are here to execute the will of the judge. It's basically
this is what I've been saying the whole time.
Well, here I am to verify it for you. And I won't say where I worked, but it's, I don't know of really anywhere that isn't like that, so it doesn't really matter. It's really sad.
So I've noticed this the whole time with my experience in and out of these programs is they're the all-seeing eye of recovery right now in Western New York is the courts.
Yeah.
It's not really recovery. I mean, it sort of is in a way. Like, yeah, you push people into meetings and all that stuff is fine.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the courts are the ones who are diagnosing, who are making treatment plans, who are deciding what these cases are.
Right.
When the people who are actually qualified are just glorified social workers, just a middleman of between the judge and the client.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought I would get away with being myself, in these places, and I didn't, and
Wow.
but then it wasn't too long after that COVID hit, and I found myself with, like I said, a lot of free time, and it didn't take long for me to decide, like, dude, you need to start doing stand up again,
Yeah.
and I tried that world, I tried that thing, and obviously I'm gonna have to work somewhere sooner or later.
Yeah.
But I tried that thing, I tried to be that guy, and it just, it's not somewhere I should be, and it's possible, from what I understand, to make an awful living, but you can make some kind of living.
You wanted to be a real counselor and affect lives, and they wanted you to be a paper pusher.
I wanted to be the kind of counselor that I had 15 years ago, because it was definitely
it used
a different
to be that
world.
way.
You could get a really good job with an associate's degree, or a bachelor's might get you as far as you can get now with like a PhD, and and you could really like be a human being with people, and that's how they used to be with me. I just didn't know what I was getting into.
The whole philosophy behind drug court.
Yeah.
The reason why it was so easily pushed, like, and everybody accepted it so fast, was because finally we're looking at addiction as something that's not just a criminal aspect. You're not just a criminal. You're someone that is sick and needs help.
Right.
What the courts did is they started off in the right place, but they brought it back to the whole criminal aspect. Like you said, we're working with the police and the judges here, and we have to admit everybody because they want us to do this.
Yeah.
So it just made a whole circle back to square one, where the person who's in court is just a criminal, has to do all these things, has to piss clean and go to these meetings and get documentation. And what is that really in recovery? In the sense of recovery, you have to want it. You have to be doing it for yourself, not for the judge, not for the cop, not for your job.
Right.
To get recovery, it has to come from the self.
Right.
There's no way a judge can get somebody clean.
Right.
They can temporarily get somebody clean, but it's funny because all these drug courts wonder why people are graduating drug court, and then a year later they're in the news passing away from overdose.
Yeah.
And it's like, hello.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something we're not doing right here.
Yeah, I think the more you externalize your responsibility to yourself, the worse off you're going to be, and if you're only doing it for these external reasons, when those external reasons are gone, you're going to be left with a void that in which probably, if anything exists, it's going to be just to keep doing whatever got you in that place to begin with. I remember when I was early at that place working, so I when I first started working there, this is what kind of clouded it for me, is that I did get my wisdom teeth out when I was there for about like a month and a half or something. I was still in training, and I had a horrible reaction. I wasn't taking pills, no narcotics or anything like that, but I was literally in a fog for like a month. I got a really bad sinus infection, and just, it was just ugly. And it was kind of in the midst of that I think they started to say, this dude is fucked up, and we need to kind of get him out of here. Like, I didn't go in. I wonder if I had COVID, to tell you the truth, or
Maybe
something.
You did.
Like, it was...
Was it right around that time?
It was, what was that? Probably like September of 19, yeah.
Because that's how a lot of healthy people who get COVID, it was just kind of like, that's what you just said, you described it.
Yeah.
You might have had it.
I wonder. Like, when I started hearing people say, I think I was like, damn, wait a minute. Because I just associated it with the wisdom tooth thing. But I mean, I was in bed and literally thought I was going to die, and if it wasn't because I thought I just had like some bad sinus infection, I probably would have been a little more scared. But I like literally couldn't move.
Was there breathing? Was there breathing?
Maybe. Like, I don't remember.
It's hard to remember
like,
those
suffocating
things.
really, but I remember just really being in a bad way. Like the idea of like sitting up just sounded like impossible kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
You probably did have COVID.
Yeah. So like I go back in, you know, and I was handling the job, but I remember one training exercise they gave us early on. They gave us a case, and this is totally fictional. I'm not talking about anything, you know, specific. This is a fictional case they gave us of some guy who, I don't remember all the details, but I know there weren't many. They would say he's using heroin, he has some domestic violence thing, and he's having trouble at his, you know, work or something like that. So from that, you might get 2 criteria for a substance use disorder. And the person who was leading the training said, now, I want you to, you know, formalize this case, assess it, and come up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan. And in that case, there was not enough to come up with even a diagnosis, really, because you need 3 criteria to meet a mild diagnosis. You need, you know, and so on from there, from moderate, and then there's more, I think 6 or more for severe. So the person actually told us, if you can't find it, just make some up. And I remember looking at her, you know, you ever have, I don't know, one of those moments where you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? And that was when I started to really feel that way. Like, I would never talk to these people if I saw them in you know, public. I would be.
It's cookie cutter.
Just want to get away from them.
It's cookie cutter recovery.
Yeah.
It's not they're trying to sample and package recovery.
Right.
You can't do that with recovery.
Right.
Every
it's
individual case has to be unique.
Right. They strike me as the kind of people who were really good students and not much else, you know?
Right. You know a lot of people like that.
And that's who I was surrounded by, me, the dropout with, you know, whatever.
Yeah. But the most qualified person, I mean, the person who lived it, half of your life you've been sober. Half of your life you've been sponsoring people and helping them get sober.
Right.
You have a master's degree in this stuff.
Right.
This is you are a walking, breathing version of recovery.
Thank
and
you.
They're going to tell you, oh, you know, we're differing, so we're going to have to let you out.
Yeah. You know?
That tells me that something's not right with our recovery system here in Western New York.
Absolutely.
That tells me that right there.
Yeah. You know, so, and I wonder, looking back, if that whole training thing that I was given was a way to kind of filter out the people who weren't willing to play ball,
right.
You know, because they were asking you to literally.
You got to make money. We have to make money.
Just, you know,
that's all it's about.
Falsify whatever you need to, but come up with a diagnosis for this person. You
right.
know, and no doubt they're making a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
And you know they were.
But what they've done is they've criminalized drugs more than it was before.
Sure.
So let's go back 20 years ago before drug court.
Yeah.
Somebody who's, let's say they're not an addict, they just went to a party, got screwed up, got a DWI, and now they come to you, and you say, okay, you had a rough night, you got a DWI, but you're telling me that you haven't drank before that for 6 months, and you don't. You know, you tell, like, whatever the qualifications are, and you don't think they're.
You're telling a story that is real.
Yeah. So you're
exactly.
like, this person does not
that
need
kind of thing. Yeah.
You're saying this person does not need all this time and money attributed to them, all this health insurance stuff.
Right.
I'm just gonna send him out, and he has to go face the judge, and whatever the judge gives him is what the judge gives him.
Right.
But instead, because of this whole drug court system, now you got to put this person through all this stuff and all these sanctions and all these whatever they have to go through, and when 20 years ago, the judge would have gave them their sentence, and that's it. They face the consequences of their DWI.
Right.
End of story.
Right.
Now you're dragging them through this whole entire process, life-changing process, and pushing them into something that they're not necessarily cut out for.
Yeah.
So it's worse than criminalizing it, because what you're doing is you're taking somebody and pushing them through a worldview and a life that they're not really supposed to be going through.
Exactly. And then they end up sometimes
they
looking at themselves in a way that probably isn't appropriate. You assume that these are healthcare professionals and they must know what they're talking about, and I'm sure that a lot of damage is created that way.
And now you create trauma.
Yeah.
Now they might become an addict.
Sure.
Now all of a sudden, okay, I'm in these meetings with these people, and this guy's, hey, let's go do some, like, he's not in recovery, he's just there for court too.
Yeah.
And he's like, pulls out a bag of Coke, and all of a sudden he's doing Coke now.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah. Well,
and it does.
Now you're stigmatized. Now you feel alienated. Now you feel lonely. You feel different. You feel less than.
You're being told by experts that you're an addict, and this is the facts. Whatever you say is wrong. You're a criminal. You're this, that.
Right. All those things I described are a perfect recipe for addiction and for stand-up comedy.
Right. And and another thing it does, another horrible thing that it does, I don't even know why I didn't bring this up yet, is what it does to actual 12-step programs when they're getting flooded with all these people who don't want to be there.
Sure. Yeah.
Screws up the whole atmosphere of these meetings.
Sure.
You got 20 people there for drug court, 10 people there for recovery.
Right.
And those 10 people are like, the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
People are just like screwing off in the back and don't care, just getting a paper sign and leaving. Right. The 12-step meeting is supposed to be a place of fellowship, a place where people come together and try to find recovery. Like they want to be there. Yeah. Not just like a judge sent me here, I got to get my thing signed so I can leave. Right. Nobody's going to catch recovery that way. Right. Until they finally hit bottom and the pain is great enough that they want to stop for themselves. And it might take, for some people, it might take 4 DWIs. I don't know. Yeah. Everyone's different. Sure. But you can't push somebody into that. No. You can try, but it's really not going to work.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. And if you know anything about, the beginning of 12-step recovery and what that looked like, it was a very small thing. It wasn't worldwide like it is now, obviously, but it wasn't also, no room was very big. There was never really much room for hoopla, and there were a lot more people with time than there were people without. When somebody showed up without a lot of experience, they were the exception. Now, you might have a few people who managed to stick it out for 6 years.
They turned it on
it's completely reversed.
Turned on its head now.
And you wonder why, it has gone to such hell, which it absolutely has. You know? And we were talking about earlier, I'm completely, empathetic toward people who just up and leave, and decide this isn't the way I want to live my life, because the healthier you get, the less you want to be in that environment, unless you have, like you were saying, that commitment to helping people and that kind of thing.
Right.
But, that it takes a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine a really just rowdy kind of disorganized place with people who are not in their best mind, and you have some kind of stability in your life. It's just not what you want to do on a Tuesday night normally,
right.
But God bless the people who do it, I guess. But also, I do think that as years go by and you find yourself so consumed by the things of recovery that you no longer live, then that is in some ways just as destructive, and just as like much a measure of self-abandonment as drug use ever could be. I think that in some point you need to throw yourself out there and just see if you die or not. You need to live. I threw myself out there and tried to live, and it didn't work out too well at the moment, but hey, I gave it a shot.
Right.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is, like we were talking about in recovery, in the 12 steps, NA or AA, whichever one you want. Yeah. One of the promises is that if you do everything that this book tells you, everything that these steps tell you, you will not relapse.
Right.
And it's true.
Right.
If you do all those things, you can't relapse, because that's part of the 12 steps, is to find a power greater than yourself and follow that will. If you're doing that, you're that's it. You're saved, whatever you want to call it. And we were debating about, like, so what is it that gets people to stay clean, not just to get clean, to stay clean? What about what's so special about the 12 steps? Yeah. And if you look at the 12, this is my personal philosophy behind it. You can pitch in yours too. Sure. Is that these 12 steps kind of guide you into the direction to find a power greater than yourself and have a spiritual awakening. Once you have that, you can't go back. So if you're trapped on an island. So for example, some people think that it's the fellowship that gets people clean. It's the people. It's the being in the atmosphere of people getting clean. Okay, there's some good valid points there. But however, and this is very theoretical, this has never happened, this is just in theory, you're trapped on an island. And on this island there's drugs everywhere. There's no meetings, there's no people, you don't even have a phone, you can't call your sponsor. Right. How do you stay clean there? Sure. The only way to do it is by serving a God or a higher power greater than yourself. It doesn't matter what it is. It really doesn't. Because I talk to people who are Christians. I got saved. I'm born again. It's a miracle. I was the worst person in the world, and now I'm clean out. Now I'm great. And then you talk to Muslims, say the same thing. Oh, I submit to Allah, and I've never turned back, and my life is amazing. And they're both telling the truth. None of them's lying. So there's something about that. There's a psychology behind it that works, right? And I'm not saying that that doesn't make both of them not real. I'm saying there's something about serving a power greater. When you take the self away, when you kill your ego, there's something about the death of the ego that catapults somebody into greatness. Right. Because now all of a sudden you can see other people's worldviews and not have to pitch in and tell them what you think and try to correct them or debate with them. You just like, okay, that's what they think. That's their worldview. That's based on their life experience. And you can identify with them instead of trying to create all these differences. Sure. And back to the island thing.
Mm.
You're on the island, and there's drugs everywhere. If you truly are serving a power greater than yourself, those drugs will mean nothing to you. We're sitting here in front of a bunch of bottles of alcohol. My parents
stop by.
Yeah. And
come on.
And the thought is not even there. I don't even care. This might as well be a lamp. It doesn't matter. It's just an object. It's just a bottle with liquid in it. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not even thinking about it. And I'm sure you're feeling the same way. And like I said, the 12 steps gears a person from the first step to the 12th step. It's all about getting to find that power greater than yourself and submitting to it.
Right. Yeah.
And what that does, when you do that, it makes you look inward, kill your ego, and become a selfless human being and give back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've toured some religions. I was raised Catholic. Went on from there, and since getting into recovery, I've gone way into atheism and all that hip stuff. I spent some time really identifying myself as like a Sufi Muslim.
Yeah, mystical Islam. Yeah.
There was a school in, I think, maybe South Carolina, the Green Mountain School. Sheikh Noruddin Durki ran it, and he would accept refugees and things, and I thought maybe he'd also accept me from Hamburg, New York, to come down and learn with him. I never went, but I learned how to read and recite and all that kind of stuff. And that was just a phase in my life.
I've read some of those Sufi mystic poems and poetry and hadiths, and it's some of the deepest. It's like,
I mean, we're in a post 9/11 world, and people have their feelings.
You need to get out of that, because I was talking about this. I had a guest on from Eastern Africa who's Muslim,
cool,
and we were talking about how if you were to judge Islam based on what happened on 9/11 or what ISIS is doing, then you have to apply that logic to every other religion, which means you have to judge Christianity based on the Spanish Inquisition when they were lighting people up on the stake and on fire. Right. So you can't do that. You have to judge. Read the Quran, and then if you have questions, go find what's the teachers? What do they call the teachers? The
Sheikh.
Yeah, and go ask them what you're. But don't just take one person. Everyone's an individual. There's good people and bad people everywhere. So like that mindset blows my mind how people do that. Oh yeah, Muslims are all right around the AK-47s and with. No, they're not.
Right.
No, they're not. They're
if
probably
they were, the world would be a really different place. A sixth of the world, all wants to, it would be insane. I mean, Germany did quite a bit with nowhere near the manpower.
Right.
So who the hell knows what would actually be happening if that was the goal? But so the hadiths are the reported sayings of Muhammad. It's not clear that he ever actually said any of that stuff.
Right.
And there are some kind of strands of Islam that don't accept them.
Yeah.
But certainly, it was a warring culture, and they were not only sort of disposed to war, they also were being attacked because of their religion. At the time, you're talking about people who would be murdered if they said that these idols that they had at the Kaaba, there were 100 of them or so, weren't the true gods, then you would be killed.
It was 365 idols.
Yeah. What'd I say, 100?
You said, yeah.
It's been some years.
This doesn't matter, yeah.
So there's 365.
They had one for every day.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Well, hey, I missed that part in the Green Mountain School class.
Yeah.
But it was a warring culture, and when they were being, persecuted for their religion, they rallied around the idea that we will not surrender. We will kill and die in adherence to our religion. And
it's the same thing as the American Revolution, if you think about it.
Sure.
What happened in 625 AD in Mecca is no different than what happened in 1776 in America. It was a revolution. It just happened to be an Islamic revolution instead of an American revolution.
Right.
So people look at that, they're like, "Oh, Islam is a religion of war."
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
where do you get that from?
They were fighting, pagans who worshipped clay sculptures, and,
right.
And the idea was to get back to a place where we're worshiping the one true God.
Yeah.
And that's what
which
I loved
happens
about
to be,
it was
which ironically is the same God of the Bible that Christians and Jews worship.
Right. So the Abrahamic, mono.
By the way, if you actually pull out a Hebrew Torah, the word for God is Al.
Yeah.
A-L.
I remember this.
So Allah, it's the same thing.
It's
the Jehovah is just a word for the Lord. That's where that came from.
Yeah.
So all these like Allah is. I've heard another Christian tell me that Allah is a moon goddess. I go, where are you getting this information from?
Well, there was a clay deity called Allat.
Well, yeah, and they called all their deities Allah. There was Allahs, like plural, but that was before Islam revolution.
Right.
So like I said, that's like saying the Greeks worship Zeus, so therefore all Christians worship Zeus now. That's it's the most ignorant thing you can say.
Sure, it's very, as they say, some knowledge is very dangerous, and I'm not pretending that, I'm some obviously expert in Quranic exegesis or anything like that, but I just in life, I've come across enough things. I've been shown that I'm wrong so many times, in my studies in philosophy and things. You're going to come face to face with yourself at some point.
Yep.
And you might hate what you run into, you know, as far as what you don't actually know. And what you can't possibly know, and you realize that maybe some of the things that you hold dearest to your heart are really just opinions that you've decided upon and that you're happy to have.
And like if you pull out Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, there's a line of philosophers that taught each other, and from person to person, their philosophy completely changes on its head. Socrates was completely different than Plato, and they had differing opinions on their worldview on what the gods are or whatever they were talking about. We were talking about the book The Republic. The whole book is a debate. It's literally debate format. There's no like plot or story. It's just Plato and Socrates and a couple other philosophers literally basically arguing with each other on what they think a society should run. Or there's a ton of topics in that book. That book is so deep, by the way.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, we don't know. Nobody has all the answers to everything. Right. That's impossible. If you think you do, you probably have. You're probably not too smart.
Right.
If you think you know everything, you're not. You're just dumb.
Yeah. I mean, they call it the Socratic problem, that we don't really know much about Socrates because what we get from him is what Plato said he said as really a literary device. You know, we don't know much about what he actually thought.
Whereas Aristotle wrote this many books.
Oh yeah, the Organon. He wrote. Well, that's funny. That's how we describe it. He wrote this much. Yeah. That's all we know. But they say that something like, I think 2/3 of it were lost. You know? This is what we have left. I mean, the dude was just not of us. You know?
He was
not of this planet.
And we're talking about 500 BC, right? Is that around?
Like
No, 300 BC. Yeah. We're talking 300 BC, and Aristotle and Plato and their mathematics and science is still being looked at as like legit today.
Yeah.
So ahead of their time, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. They were geniuses. There's
geniuses,
no question. And nothing like that happened until Germany,
where
you had
Freud,
like Nietzsche and they were all living at the same time.
Yeah, you're right.
It was not
Einstein.
until then that many people
it's funny
with
that you said that.
Revolutionary ideas ended up living in the same place.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because you're right.
Yeah.
This same line of thinking from Plato and Aristotle and them, all of a sudden, it just like we had like the Christianity just kind of ruled the world for like 1,000, 1,500 more years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have, who was first? Was it Nietzsche was first or no? Was it
of who?
Freud or Nietzsche? Which one was first? I don't know. One of those...
I know they've commented on each other. I think I remember Freud quoting something from Nietzsche, but it could be the other way around.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Nietzsche was older. Nietzsche died in 1900. When did Freud die?
I don't know.
Later,
I think it was later. So you're right. And then Jung was last. Okay. But you can compare those three, even Einstein too. That line, I think you can compare those to the Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle back in the day, whereas they took from each other and they sort of like build on each other's work, and they got the final. I think Jung was the final. He put it all together, like his book, Man and Symbols, and the deep subconscious realm, like the unconscious, the dreams interpretation.
Yeah.
He got all that from Nietzsche and Freud, and it's so comparable to the philosophers of Greece. Like it's funny how that works. Like,
and we owe a lot of our understanding of recovery to Jung and to other really philosophers. And it's funny that people are so anti-thinking. In recovery, they think if you think you're going to hurt yourself. The truth is, and I'm not saying this to be mean,
right?
Most people probably couldn't really overthink something if they tried. You think you're overthinking, you're really just thinking.
You're just thinking.
And you haven't thought for so long You've been thinking in these completely animalistic terms of see drug, get it, need money, steal it, and then you find yourself introduced to this world of really complex and noble spiritual principles. And it just feels so overwhelming that you feel like if I really dive all the way into that, I'm going to lose myself and I'm going to hurt myself. And it's just not true.
Not true at all.
That is actually the solution.
In fact,
but people have demonized the idea of thinking or becoming this thing that they're afraid to become, which is like a thoughtful person.
And exactly,
and
you said that
where they are.
it's actually the solution.
That sounded incredibly judgmental.
So no, but seriously though, when you dive into all that thought, all those like thinking and philosophy and all these worldviews, and you look at them and try to identify and find where you can take something out of it.
Yeah.
You actually, what you're doing is you're rewiring your thought process.
Right. Sure.
It's like the most.
The brain works that way. It's not. You don't just have what you have.
That's why
the brain wants to learn things.
That's why Nietzsche.
It can change.
That's why Nietzsche wrote, "And thus spoke Zarathustra."
Yeah.
He wrote, "Man is just a rope to the Superman."
Yeah.
And what he means by that is that we're just I'm trying to think of how a word to describe. We're just a process, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the word for like getting better, like over time, or
wish I could help you.
Yeah, whatever.
Call it progress.
We're just a progression.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the
that
word.
Was it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Good.
I'm just having a brain.
I was thinking way deeper.
Humanity itself is just a progression over time of building on ideas and building on concepts. Like nobody just one day came up with the idea to invent a camera. It came from something before that. There was some sort of device that was able, people just drawing stuff. Like I can draw you. And then over time, that idea turned into the camera, the iPhone. Yeah. All these ideas build off other ideas. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like we're all just one linear event of humanity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of, Nietzsche's Superman, the Ubermensch is the person who doesn't have a belief system as a crutch to be who he actually is. And that's the ultimate
that ruffled a lot of feathers
for the person who is maybe in recovery and hates the idea of striking out into a intellectual individuality.
And he wrote in that same book, it actually was in the same paragraph too.
Yeah.
He wrote, "God is dead."
Yeah.
So a lot of people took that and said, "Oh no, you can't say that." Mm-hmm. But what he actually meant by that was that we killed God. We turned away from God. We turned away from nature, and now we're focused on advancements and all this stuff, and we forgot where our morals come from.
Right.
So what Nietzsche was trying to do was he wasn't trying to get away from the spiritual principles behind God and religion. He was trying to take those principles and apply it to the progress of humanity.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard to grasp. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But it's super, super compelling to think about.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed reading Nietzsche probably just as much, if not more, than anybody else I've read.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Every single word and syllable is put there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's got layers behind the layers.
Absolutely.
Dude, just go read one paragraph of Nietzsche and just try to internalize it. He's a genius.
And he wrote in aphorisms. They're easy to digest. You can read one a day, like a daily meditation Nietzsche book. We're writing it. We're going to fucking put one together.
That's a good idea,
dude.
That
is a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you might find yourself sad, eventually just from thinking about all this
stuff.
But
I actually would think that
you'll get over it.
I actually think that he was better than Freud and Jung at putting sentence structures together.
Yeah.
I think he was on another level that's never been touched before or ever since then.
I mean, I can't imagine, the German, like, what was his name? Something Kaufman. Walter Kaufman, I think, was his main, like, kind of translator. He's the one who really brought Nietzsche's work to us.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's not negative. It's forcing you to kind of abandon crutches, and try to...
it's not nihilism at all.
Really face things like Foursquare, and I would say, if you... challenge yourself to get into that if that's, something you're interested in. It's a realm of life that is demonized by people who are afraid, but it speaks to courage, and it's definitely nourishing, I think.
And it's truth.
Yeah.
It comes from a place of truth and not pandering to a certain group of people and just coming from like reality.
Yeah.
Like put it something you can actually touch and not have to pretend it's there when it's not.
Yeah.
It's real. Like this stuff is real.
Yeah.
We're living in a real world right now. This is reality. Like we can describe it. This thing is metal. This thing is wood. Like there is truth, and then there's what's it called? Fantasy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the humility of philosophy is that you don't know, and
right.
You're not. You can kind of think you might know something, but there's sometimes reasons to think that you might not, and you get into really weird arguments about the brain and the vat or whatever, and that stuff never appealed to me. But what's happening in philosophy in universities now is that philosophy is trying to cling to life however it can, and they're starting to basically prostitute themselves and whore themselves out to the mathematics department, to anybody they can get their hands on to make it seem like we're actually part of you, and we can help you remain a department, and sometimes they get funding. So if you take philosophy now, you're probably going to get a lot of what we call analytic style philosophy, which is like logic, Bertrand Russell and math, and all this ugly stuff, who the arrogance of thinking that things can be reduced to symbols. I remember hearing a professor just go off about this, just the idiocy of that idea that it's all really just math. The whole world is just an equation. It's
right.
Like,
it's not that simple.
Yeah. So then you have the continental, it's called, it's kind of a whatever, the continent being Europe. But I would say that certainly Plato falls under that. Aristotle might have been maybe a little more analytic than anything, if you want to use modern terms to describe them. But the continental school is a lot more free thinking, and that's where you get like spirituality, and things like that from. And it's just sad that, kind of like we were talking about earlier, the decline of life, in intellect. I hate to sound like I'm, just disparaging society as a whole, and I don't mean to sound negative, but that's just another example of how when you end up with so many people doing so many different things, progress isn't always going to bring you fruits. Sometimes it creates a bottleneck where you have to do something stupid and say something stupid or be outlandish to get any kind of recognition. It's a big plate of
nihilism sometimes.
Sure, and that's the world we're living in, where if you want to get ahead, you might need to be either some kind of sociopath or be some
like the Catch Me Outside girl,
violent person.
The Catch Me Outside girl, she's making millions of dollars right now because she went on Dr. Phil. It was such a piece of shit, to be honest. I mean, look, come on, let's be real.
Yeah.
Like I'm sounding like a hater, but bro, this girl went on Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Completely rejected that she had an issue with her parents or whatever, and now she's literally getting rewarded for that. Our society rewards that behavior now.
Yeah. We are so starved for stimulation that even if it's completely ridiculous, if it tickles us for whatever reason, we'll go with it. And ordinarily, the things that really tickle a brain that is already overstimulated isn't something that's actually worthwhile.
Wow.
It's going to be something that is completely idiotic and creates, this just sensation that, wow, this is a thing, this has my attention. It's a spectacle.
It's amazing because the farther we get advanced in technology and science and medicine, it's almost like we're dumbing down our ability to like be normal, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like everything's so absurd and crazy and lunatic, and
that's what the Unabomber said.
Yeah.
I'm not supporting Unabombing, but the Unabomber I'll tell you, he had some pretty damn good ideas.
A lot of crazy people do.
I wouldn't say he tried to get the message out there in the best way, but if you read his manifesto, you might find yourself feeling how Nietzsche will make you feel. It's like, I don't want to read this, and by the end, you're like, God damn.
Yeah.
What is
that's
life?
That's the thing about the mind is that it's so complex. People are so layered. You can't just define people with one word.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, he was brilliant, and that was one of his main ideas, is that technology is ruining us. It's turning us into slaves to it, and it's getting us
kind of making us lazy too.
Raw living.
Yeah. Like now you just got to pull out your phone and Google something instead of actually pulling out a book and reading a couple paragraphs and understanding what you're looking for. You go straight to the answer, and it's like, we don't remember phone numbers anymore. Right. We can't remember addresses. It's all just like given to us by these. We're like cyborgs now.
Yeah. And I think we're in the same age bracket. We remember when life didn't have that, but it was also young enough that we got introduced to it that it became kind of our norm. We're in a really weird place, I think, because I remember being early teens. One guy had a cell phone. It was like, it wasn't a flip. It wasn't anything. It was just a box.
Yes, I remember those days too.
And it had minutes, and it was like a precious thing to call with it. He had the power.
No texting. Yep.
Yeah, and remembering that and seeing how far things have come in, 15 years, 20 years.
Right.
It's just what a time to be alive. I
yeah,
guess.
we're literally watching the world just morph into some different thing.
We've gone all the way down a rabbit hole here, and it's worth asking now where we're headed, because I'm waiting for something really bad to happen, to tell you the truth.
I feel it. Don't you feel like
there's
that?
There's going to be a bomb or something.
Doesn't it feel? Isn't there like a presence in the air that something bad's about to happen?
Bomb
I can't explain
4 or 5 times.
I know.
On your podcast.
We're gonna get flagged now.
Yeah. I am not bombing anything. I think you are going to bomb me.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact.
Exactly.
That's where I'm going with it. But
wow, we're already 15 minutes. We're already an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I don't care, dude. This was great. This is why I wanted to bring you on, dude, because you're such a deep thinker.
Well, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for the whole East Coast or something to just get wiped out. And
power grid shuts off or something.
Yeah, an announcement of this is how it is now, kind of thing. Which I guess people have always been saying, but now's the time. You've got some issues that are not going to go away in even maybe 100 years. And
right.
There's that. What is it? It's like a rock or something in Georgia that says there should never be more than how many people?
It's in Georgia.
It's like 80,000 or something.
No, I think it's 150,000.
Oh well, okay.
Or maybe 300. It's in the 100,000s, which is nothing.
Yeah,
which is compared to billions.
400 million people in America.
It's like 5% of the world.
Yeah, which you can't believe everything you read on a rock in the woods. But I think that.
What is that stone
people
called?
Do believe
if anyone knows what that stone called, throw it in the comments.
Below. Yeah. But people believe
the Georgia Stones.
This kind of stuff.
It's called the Georgia Stones.
Oh, okay, see, never mind.
I just popped in my head.
You don't have to comment.
No. The Georgia Guiding Stones, I think it's called.
Okay.
Something like that. Whatever.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But
I'm wrong.
But yeah, I mean, there's stuff out there, and I'm sure that the whole political realm. I don't think that I would ever know anything worth knowing about it. And it amazes me that people are all over Facebook and they just well, it's not like that, it's like this. It's like if there was anything worth knowing, you wouldn't know it. That's how I feel.
That's the thing about politics.
If they were really doing something like that, I don't think that you'd have a clue. And you congratulate yourself because you thought it, and it sounded great, and it was also maybe against the opinion of other people you don't like. You know? But I'm kind of in a place where I don't believe anything. And I don't want to even.
Well, the thing about politics now,
I want to sit in the audience for that show.
The thing about politics now is
I opt out.
The thing about politics now that's really a bummer is that now we're at a point now where it's like, if you subscribe to one idea that happens to be Republican, you have to subscribe to all the other ideas that are Republican, or you're a heretic. Same with Democrats.
Right.
You have to, if you want universal health care, well, you better be pro-choice. You better be this. You better be that. Yeah. And if not, you're one of those crazy right wingers, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And nobody comes from a place of actual real heart, they feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more or less I'm following the people who I most likely subscribe to.
Yeah.
So that's why we got two.
Of my parents, or whoever I.
Yeah, that's why we only have two parties.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's why it is that way.
Absolutely. It's not an accident.
Right.
That it's set up the way it is.
Yep.
So, until further notice, that's what I'm doing. I'm just waiting for
all the crash and burn,
happen,
dude. Like the end of the end of Fight Club when he's watching all the buildings fall down. That's what I'm waiting for.
Nice. Well, that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thought.
We're definitely getting flagged now.
Yeah, I was telling you how I wanted to do stand up and stuff, and we talked about the most depressing, horrible shit, for a half hour.
Unabomber.
This
and
is
stuff.
Not an indication of the quality of my work.
This has been real though.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Hope this was useful to somebody, however it might be. I wish I had links for you to click, or pages for you to follow.
Just go to his Facebook, follow him on there.
I'm not even, you can't cancel me because I'm not even a thing yet, But one day I will be, and I won't say bomb on show. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we close out, first of all, how old are you and how many years clean do you have?
I'm 30. February marked 15 and a half years.
Wow, half of your life, dude.
Yeah, and
that's amazing.
A lot of people, like I said, we were talking about have come in after me. And
you
I'm
said
sure
June?
there were people before me.
You said June is your
August 3rd.
So this August, you officially have more clean time than the rest of your life.
Yeah,
you'll be over the half mark.
Yeah. That's
wild, dude.
Sure,
it's incredible though. Something to be proud of, because I watch a lot of people come into recovery at a young age and look to you as as someone to strive to be. You really paved a road for people, especially just in this area, but even just beyond Buffalo, like you know, in general, young people in recovery who feel like they shouldn't be there and see you and see where you're at, goes a long way.
Yeah. There's a reason people don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, it was not like
it's not easy.
It was not a particularly straightforward or painless experience to find myself really. I already felt alienated, you know, and to get clean and to be in this really strange world with all these, you know, old people, it really, and not really seeing an end to the alienation, you know, never really knowing if I would kind of find something, you know, that I might kind of really fit with. That's real, you know, so I was never surprised when somebody would be in like rehab when they were young, and you know, they had girlfriends and they had like, you know, kids they grew up with on the outside who were still doing whatever they were doing. And you're trying to tell this child, you need to get rid of all your friends.
Yeah.
You need to get rid of all that. Fortunately for me, I had no friends, and I certainly didn't have a girlfriend, for God's sakes. I don't have one now. Definitely didn't then. So I didn't have those challenges.
Those
I
challenges
guess in a
definitely
lot of
are
ways,
real.
I don't want to, you know, take away from the great story you just told about me, you know, but I think in some ways it maybe happened by some kind of default. It was going to happen to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, somebody had to.
You were chosen.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody had to have it happen to them, you know. It just happened to be me. And I'm hoping I can cash in on some more being the statistical anomaly, because I need a whole lot more of that in my life right now.
Man. Yeah. Don't we all?
Exactly. So you're the man. Thank you so much.
It's been real, guys. Everybody stay tuned for the next one.
Stay tuned.
Nickel City Chronicles.
Peace. Thank you.
It's been on this whole time. Even with your narrating. And he's gone.